find them no more at all. Babylon. The dainties, the delicacies, the depraved material madness, gone. Well, the merchants, verse 15, of these things which were made rich by her, Babylon made these merchants rich, shall stand afar off for fear of her torment, weeping and wailing, verse 16, and saying, Alas, alas, that great city that was clothed in fine linen and purple and scarlet and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, for in 1 hour so great riches is come to naught. Over and over again, this phrase 1 hour pops up because to these people in John's day, that would be mind-blowing. In 1 hour, a great commercial center wiped out. Even as Isaiah chapter 13, Jeremiah that we read previously said, wiped out like Sodom and Gomorrah. Sodom and Gomorrah. Wiped out through intensive heat, fire, and brimstone. Brimstone is sulfur, the same thing that would be used in the detonation of huge modern explosions. Now, this is where it gets intriguing if you're trying to figure out, is Babylon really the city south of Baghdad, or is it a name for another city? Because verse 17 says, and every shipmaster, and all the company in ships and sailors, and as many as trade by the sea, stood afar off when they saw the smoke of her burning, and they said, What city is like unto this great city? And they cast dust on their heads, and they cried, weeping and wailing, Alas, alas, that great city, wherein were made rich all that had ships in the sea by reason of her costliness, for in 1 hour she is made desolate. Whoa. Here's a twist. Here's a kink. Here's a problem. Here's a clue. The people in ships who sail into Babylon see the destruction of Babylon from afar off, and they're lamenting. They were made rich, these merchant marines. Their wealth depended on interaction with Babylon. But wait, when you look on your map, you'll notice that Babylon, the literal place Babylon in Iraq, 50 miles south or so of Baghdad, is not a seaport city. Cannot be seen from the sea. It's inland. It's landlocked. Now, for this reason, many would say it cannot be the physical Babylon in Iraq that's being talked about here, because the merchants in their ships who were sailing into this city see it from the sea going up in smoke and fire. We'll come back to that momentarily. Rejoice over her, verse 20, rejoice over her, heaven, and you holy apostles and prophets, for God hath avenged you to her. Rejoice, heaven. The kings are lamenting, but heaven is rejoicing. The silliness and stupidity of materialistic Babylon. Using people, loving things, instead of loving people and using things. Heaven says, rejoice. This whole system of fornication, economically, rejoice. It's wiped out. So the mighty angel, verse 21, took up a stone like a great millstone, cast it into the sea, saying, Thus with violence shall that great city Babylon be thrown down, and shall be found no more at all. And the voice of harpers and musicians and pipers and trumpeters shall be heard no more at all. No more, Babylon, will you be blaring with music from Planet Hollywood and the this Hard Rock. That was a goof. The Hard Rock Cafe, Planet Hollywood, Studio 21, Rock and Rodeo. whatever it might be, no more. No more musicians and pipers and trumpeters shall be heard. No craftsman, whatsoever craft he be, shall be found any more in thee. No more entrepreneurs is the idea here. And the sound of a millstone shall be heard no more at all in thee. Man, I just got my nose to the grindstone. I'm going to make it. If I can make it there, I can make it anywhere. You see. No more. Frank Sinatra. Forget New York, New York. It's not going to be. And the light of a candle, verse 23, shall shine no more at all in thee, which again would be mind-blowing and mind-boggling to John and those people in his day, because why would there be no candles? I mean, everybody has candles. Not anymore, not in today's modern city. And if indeed there be a nuclear explosion, as would seem to be being described here, in 1 hour, a city going up in smoke and disappearing literally, the outlying regions would have no power, no electricity, total darkness. Forget all the fancy weddings. The voice of the bridegroom and bride shall be heard no more in thee at all. And now we see in these last phrases a clue that may tell you and may tell me who Babylon really is. Number one, for thy merchants were the great men of the earth. Clue number one. The great men of the earth doesn't mean great morally or great in character. It means your merchants were the richest men on the face of the earth. You made huge amounts of money. And the whole idea of chapter 18 is you did it through fornication. You used people. You used nations to make your fortune. Yesterday in the paper, it explained in the San Francisco Chronicle on page 1 why the tobacco companies in our nation can afford $1 trillion settlement. Why they are willing to pay $1 trillion or more. Seemingly, that would bankrupt a corporation. But it's a drop in the bucket to the tobacco corporations of our nation, because while sales are going down and litigation is going up, lawsuits are increasing, problems are obvious as it relates to our civilization, our country. Their profits are going through the roof as they are aggressively selling cigarettes in the poorest parts of the world. Losing money at home is more than made up for by the aggressive marketing while we're fighting over Joe Camel, whether Joe Camel should be allowed in our magazines and on our billboards. Our government is approving a radical, aggressive advertising campaign in other poor nations around the world to sell products that we know damage people. While we tighten our own rules, while we argue over Joe Camel, our government is approving, encouraging, allowing the same companies to aggressively market, giving away boxes and cartons of cigarettes for the specific purpose of hooking young people in poor countries. Now, this isn't some preacher ranting and raving. Pick up yesterday or 2 days ago now, Chronicle front page story. This is the way it is. Our country is getting wealthy. Our corporations are getting rich through fornication, messing up other people. Of that there can be no question. Exploiting You sound like a communist, John. I'm not a communist. Not even a Democrat. But neither am I one who does not see what the Lord is talking about in Revelation chapter 18 and understand that we in our nation, much of our nation, many in our nation have accumulated great, great wealth at the expense of abusing poorer nations and poorer peoples. That's a clue. Your merchants were the great men of the earth. They were the money guys. Why? For by thy sorceries were all nations deceived. So first of all, love of wealth, that's one clue. There's a love of wealth, an accumulation of wealth. Number two, there's the deception of drugs. The word sorcery there is pharmakia. By thy sorceries were all nations deceived. All nations, the word deceived is literally ensnared. Why is there a drug problem in the world today? I'll tell you why. Babylon. It's based upon supply and demand. They don't grow poppies in the Middle East, or they don't grow marijuana south of the border if there's no market. But if there is a market, believe me, all nations of the world will meet that market. And where is that market? America. Heroin addiction, as you're well aware of, is going through the ceiling. And Calvin Klein had the absolute audacity to tell Larry King a few nights ago, hey, this ad campaign that we've been running now for a couple of years with these women posing to sell our clothing items, who weigh about 45 pounds, who have messed up hair and black eyes, and they're pinching their skin, and they have bands around their arms. It's obvious to anyone what is happening there. Even Bill Clinton acknowledges it. It's a heroin chick. It's a glorification of the whole heroin subculture. And heroin is skyrocketing, not just in the ghetto areas or in the poorer peoples, but all across every socioeconomic group, heroin. And Calvin Klein said, no, I just consider these beautiful women. We're not suggesting anything. They're just beautiful women. Come on, Calvin. Rich, wealthy, great men making money by exploiting, by deceiving, by ensnaring, drug trafficking, sorceries, pharmakia, that's what the word means, pharmakia, pharmacy, drug taking. And our nation, this country, is driving the drug trade in the world today without any question, because we pay the prices. It's interesting to me what's happened in our country. It used to be that if a person was a druggie, that people would really look down on a person who was so foolish to inject in their veins heroin. But now, if you watch these things on TV, the audiences clap on Oprah, or the audiences clap on Letterman, or whatever it might be, when somebody says, yeah, I checked into Betty Ford, and yeah, I was on cocaine, or I was on heroin. It's almost like it's part of what you do to be real cool now in athletics or in the rock scene or in Hollywood. The beautiful people, all of them. It's like, isn't this noble? I was on heroin or I was on cocaine, but now, you see, I've been clean for 3 months. Yay! What? Talk to me about that. Why should we glorify and honor a person who knowingly said, I'm going to get involved in the drug scene. Why would that make them a hero in our culture today? It does. An athlete, a movie star who is rehabbed suddenly becomes a hero. And what's that communicating to our whole youth culture? This is what you do. You make the NBA, you go on drugs, you go to Betty Ford, and then you get applause on Oprah. Oh, got it. Is that right? What's happening here? It's deception. The Bible calls it sin, sorcery. It's dumb. But our country looks at it differently. The nations were deceived by your sorcery, and in her was found the blood of prophets and saints and all that were slain upon the earth. Number 3, not only love of wealth, deception of drugs, but number 3, the death of saints. Oh, wait. What are you suggesting there, John, as it relates to us? We don't kill Christians. Are you sure? Do you realize since the year 1900, the turn of the century, 250,000 Christians, listen, 250,000 Christians have been killed each year for their faith. 250,000 believers have been killed each year on an average from 1900 to 1997. 250,000 annually have been killed for their faith around the world. We are living in a time of unprecedented martyrdom. Yes, the martyrdom was more intense in the earliest days of the church in the first 3 centuries. But since that time, we are now living in an era when martyrdom is happening with intensity and frequency that is unlike virtually any other time in history except for those first 3 centuries. Well, not here. Listen, I told you about China. Really rotten things are taking place there, folks. Not just the abortion where, because they have said you can only have 1 child per family, are 9 out of 10 abortions, female fetuses being flushed out, done in. And where is the feminists, the movement, the Now group, Patricia Ireland, all that gang? Where are they? When we're seeing a terrible, terrible holocaust of women. 9 out of 10 aborted fetuses, babies in China are female because people are getting ultrasounds and they say, hey, we only have 1 kid, we want a boy to continue on the family name. But that's, so much is happening in China. The majority of Christian persecution is happening in China. That's where the bulk of people are dying for their faith in the world today. Our brothers and sisters are being slaughtered in China. And you know what? Our country knows about it. It's been debated in the halls of Congress. What did we decide to do? Once again, to grant China what? Most favored nation status. We refuse to say, on the basis of how you're killing Christians, or on the basis of how you're involved in this abortion, which is wiping out women, we're not going to give you most favored nation trading status. No, the debate took place in Congress, and guess who won? Babylon. The money interests. 1.25 billion people in China. It's a gigantic market that we can't afford to lose out on, even if it means Christians are being killed and women are being slaughtered. Can't afford it. So, John, what are you suggesting here? I'm saying that these